Jason Fitz joins us every Wednesday here on the Sports Bash Court. You can catch Spain and Fitz now every Monday through Friday, 7 p.m. ESPN Radio, and here on 97.3 ESPN Radio, as the sports world is being absolutely bonkers. Now this new ESPN lineup with Keyshawn and Jaywell and Zubin. You got Mike Greenberg, the midday 12 to 2, and Jason Fitz, all part of those shuffling decks. He joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Jason, how you doing with the new show, man?
Man, I'm excited. Thanks for having me. And look, Sarah is somebody that, I've been friends with for a long time since we worked together the first time. And what's incredible is that now we get to work together again. And a lot of people don't know this, but Sarah and I have so much in common in pop culture that we enjoy, like the trash TV all the way to Saturday Night Live, like our music taste. So, it's funny, all the things we have in common. So the opportunity to go in and do a show with somebody that is such a good friend is incredible for me. I've been lucky that they keep letting me work with people that I consider to be friends. It makes shows fun.
And for me, it's fun as well because I'm on before you 6 to 7 for game night usually. And for me, I get to hear two people having fun, having a good time, talking sports. So it's definitely a win-win in my opinion.
Well, thanks. And it's nice having a lead in. Come on now. But my thing is that 7 to 9 particularly presents its own unique opportunity. Like I always said, when we did it the first time, when we did Spain and Fitz the first time, one of the things that really struck me is that by the time somebody gets to ESPN Radio at that time of night, they're ready to look forward. And so much of the day is spent looking back at what happened and talking about what happened with big takes, that it's nice to be able to sort of turn the page and set the table at night. And that's something that we get to do. We get to be first reacting to a lot of what's coming right then in the moment. So I love being on at that time. Plus, it's nice to not have to go to bed at 9 o'clock to get up for the next morning. So I'm all in on it.
I'm with you there. I am not an early bed guy. I'm a guy up till midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning because I'm watching sports, and I eventually fall asleep with the TV on, but that's just me. So one of the things I want to touch on with you is you had Aaron Baines on the show last night, and this NBA playoff, these first couple of days have been absolutely insane. I thought it was interesting. Baines told you that he's rooting for Kawhi Leonard, and the Clippers are kind of like a hot pick now that the Lakers lost to the Blazers last night.
It shows you something about the lingering effect of Kawhi, right? Like Baines made no mistake about the fact that saying like Kawhi's my guy, and that's a sentiment in the NBA. When you start talking to players love Kawhi. So when you start looking around and figuring out who goes to play where, we always have this conversation about LeBron and whether or not people want to play with him. Well, we've gotten that answer. Now we go into the playoffs where suddenly the Lakers, I was surprised. And let me say this loudly. I was wrong. I went on radio and said the Lakers were going to thump Portland over the course of this series. I still think they win it, but my God, they just looked flat last night. And I don't know, compared to all of the rest of the playoff basketball we've seen. The Bucks got their butts kicked, but at least they played with some level of energy, sloppy or not. The Lakers last night just looked like they were lazy, settling for shots. It looked like they didn't have that extra step, and it looked like they really lacked, frankly, give a damn. And I'm surprised to see that at the beginning of a playoff run that means so much to this team.
What can you say about Damian Lillard, the run that he's on right now? I don't know if there's an athlete that can you root for an athlete more than you can root for Damian Lillard right now with his attitude towards the game?
No, and look, I think he had to come with a different level, though, guys, because remember, he is the one that said, I'm not going to the bubble to play unless we have a shot at the playoffs. So obviously that's the way it came down. Then he had to come in and show that it was all worth it. And he seems to have risen to this. But the biggest part about it is there's a different level of joy. A lot of times when you see guys get to this level of hot, there's also sort of a chip on their shoulder. There's like I don't know, like an energy to them, an anger to the way they play. Damian Lillard is playing with joy right now, and his teammates are playing with joy. Look at the smiles and the laughter, and you think about sort of the way it goes, and his ability to come around the screen and shoot from anywhere is just absolutely incredible. That being said, let's remember Utah-Denver was proof night one. You can have great production from the backcourt and still lose a game. Last night came down not just to Damian Lillard. It came down to the absolute ineffectiveness of Anthony Davis. And if AD's going to be one of the top 3 players in the league, he sure as heck better play like it in the playoffs. Otherwise, we're going to have some question marks about him and LeBron moving forward.
Speaking of question marks, speaking of LeBron, I actually love the contrast of worlds between the Blazers and the Lakers, especially because of the two of the guys from the same draft, Carmelo and LeBron. You talk about two guys, their whole life up to that draft and then after that draft have been completely different. And now we get skinny Melo in the bubble and LeBron after the game saying, it was a little different without the fans out there.
Yeah, and that's so funny because Melo has found like the fountain of youth. And then you turn around and you talk to LeBron about different without fans out there. That's hard for me to wrap my head around because this wasn't day one in the bubble. Whatever difficulty they were facing is something they've been facing since they got into the bubble when it comes to the lack of a crowd. And frankly, I know, and I've seen some of the tweets and reporters that have said, well, look, LeBron's been playing in front of huge crowds since he was in 8th grade. That doesn't matter. You still got to go out there and do your job. And I know that sports are much different than music, but I make those analogies sometimes because of my past. And I will tell you this, there's absolutely, when you are touring at the highest level, you can't have a different show based on whether there was 25,000 or 25 people in the crowd. It is your job to go out and do your best professionally every single night. I expect that. I think the world demands that from LeBron, and to come in and talk about the crowd at this point feels forced and like an excuse, a cheap excuse for a team that lost a game they shouldn't have lost last night.
Let's transition to the 76ers. You saw game one. They fell to the Boston Celtics. Gordon Hayward will not be available to play. Do you think that changes the series?
Yeah, it has to. I mean, and look, I was surprised. You guys know this. You know Philly better than anybody, right? There are certain times that you watch a game in general and you think, man, they're going to pull this one out. And I spent most of the game watching Philly thinking, they're going to find a way to win this. Like that, this is going to go the way of Philly. Now, I realize you guys have seen that so much. Maybe your heartbreak is too much to let you go there. But I felt like it was theirs, and then they just found a way to lose it, more than Boston found a way to win. And so you start thinking about the lack of Gordon Hayward. Now, I think that's huge for the Celtics, and frankly, the Celtics seem to have been bitten by that injury bug for the last couple of years. I'm not sure how they get past it, how they get through it. I think it puts a different level of pressure on Philadelphia. They should win this series. Brett Brown should win this series at this point, because they're a better team than a Gordon Hayward-less Celtics.
Well, you mentioned the name that is the greatest controversy in this area, which is Brett Brown. So what does you think Brett Brown has to do to keep his job, in your opinion? If you were running the Sixers, can Brett Brown keep his job if he loses this series? Does Brett Brown keep his job if he goes how far in the playoffs?
Eastern Conference Finals a bust. I mean, that's the very line, and even then it's still questionable. I mean, you got as much talent on that roster as basically anybody could have in the East, and I realize that Toronto and Milwaukee are both supposed to be clear-cut favorites out of the conference, but the fact is it is much easier to find one coach than it is to find two franchise players, and that's what the 76ers should have in theory with Embiid and Simmons. So it's about getting the most out of them, and that's not happening. Now, I do believe at some point professionals, it's their job to be professionals. Find that spark, get yourself going, make sure that you play at the best of your ability. But if a coach has lost the ability to communicate that to players, then at some point that lies squarely at the feet of the coach. And it's much easier to change him than it is to change every other piece. So Brett Brown, to me, is gone. If he can't, he has to get to the Eastern Conference Final, and they still have to show out there. Even if they lose it, they have to show out for him to keep his job.
I would have to agree. Now let's flop over to baseball. We're hitting everything here. Fernando Tatis Jr. This situation is bonkers. I can't believe the outrage going on. 3-0 count. His manager apparently gave him the don't swing sign. He swings anyway. Grand slam. They were up 7 at the time. Your thoughts?
Love it. Look, you're talking to a guy that presses pause on a Madden game or calls a timeout on a Madden game with 2 seconds left if I can add on a field goal. Just I want the extra point.
Is that against the computer or another online player?
Either or. I will do it against anybody. But here's the thing. So we're going to relate this to trash TV because I watch too much of it. If you've ever watched Bar Rescue or Kitchen Nightmares, 2 great shows, right? If you've ever watched that, like John Taffer will sit in there on Bar Rescue and he'll sit across from a bar owner, and the bar owner will listen to all these changes and say, but what about our regulars? I'm worried about our regulars. And I watched one episode where John Taffer looked an owner in the eyes and said, if your regulars were keeping this business open, I wouldn't be here. I would challenge that's the same mindset around Major League Baseball. At some point, if the regulars, if the unwritten rules of baseball people were keeping the sport growing, if the sport was thriving like never before, then unwritten rule guy could come out and die on that hill. That's not happening. And look, realistically, we've all talked about, why is the sports radio content 101 for so many people how to fix baseball? Because there's at least a perception that they have a marketing issue. Personality provides marketing, and there's an opportunity from all of this. And I believe that for every fan that walks away because unwritten rules are being violated, there are 3 that will walk in and say, wow, this is fun. I like watching this guy. I'm going to watch this team play. So to me, if I'm Major League Baseball, I love it. I'm embracing it. How many people are just learning about this? Like, I think it's incredible for the sport. And if he wants to keep if he wants to steal, if he wants to swing, if they want to run up the score every single day, that's only going to make more people watch this truncated season. I think baseball should be all in on marketing it.
I mean, I at least know for me and Hunter too. I mean, we sit there and we're like, well, it's 11 o'clock. Let's go find the Padres on our dial because of the fact that, if we can get the Padres on TV, we can watch them. We want to see them because you want to see the best players in the game. But I got to ask you, you're someone, you interact with sports fans all the time. You interact with a lot of different people from a lot of different walks of life. Can you put your finger on why there is a group of people who are so resistant to allowing baseball to be fun?
I think for so many people, sports are about the way we remember them as a kid. And baseball particularly is let's say father-son, father-daughter. Like, it's a parent-child sport, right? Like, you remember going to the ballpark with your dad and you're watching it. And for so many people, it was about charting the game and watching what was happening. And there's a certain experience around it. And for whatever reason, when you look across, whether it's the people talking about baseball, whether it's the fans that are yelling about baseball, whether it's the managers, I mean, you look across the board, it's an older crowd, frankly, that's sitting here talking about a lot of these issues. And that crowd is more steeped in tradition. And so it feels like there's just this piece that's missing. And I'll say, look, I think some of this is in every sport. Like, how many NFL fans will come in now every time there's a hit on a quarterback? You've got the guy in the room that's like, 10 years ago, like, that guy always exists, right? The person that's holding on to the past of whatever the sport might be. And I understand it, but it feels like particularly baseball fans are holding on to the past and the memories of what the game used to be and how it's supposed to be played because of it, rather than realizing that, hey, if there's something that we can be doing right now that will help market it, that's only going to make memories for another generation, which is the key to keeping a sport moving forward. Baseball and hockey are the two sports, and you guys know I'm a hockey guy, but baseball and hockey are the two sports that seem locked into this is the way we do it, and you're not cool if you don't get it, and I'm not going to explain it to you. And I don't understand that logic at all.
He's Jason Fitz every Monday through Friday night, 7 to 9 here on 97.3 ESPN Radio and ESPN Radio nationally. Joins us every Wednesday here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Jason, appreciate the time on a Wednesday and have a good show tonight, man.
I appreciate you guys so much. Have a great week.